Hey folks, it's Nate. Thanks for joining me at the art table again today. I want to start by wishing you a Merry Christmas because this will be my last video before Christmas. I will not be posting another video until the Friday before New Year's. Hopefully you can make do without me for the next week. I also say Merry Christmas because this is a Christmas-themed video, which is of course why you are seeing a scene from The Two Towers. I wanted to talk a little bit about salvation in storytelling. And salvation, especially this time of year, people think of specifically in terms of the Christian religion and the gospel of Jesus. And I am okay with that. I myself am a Christian, and I think salvation through Christ is something that everyone needs. But I don't think it's something that every story needs. In fact, if you look at the life of Jesus himself, he was quite the storyteller. And while all the stories he told pointed back to himself and his gospel in one way or another, most of them did not explicitly tell a story of salvation. If you consider one of his most famous parables, the parable of the prodigal son, that is a story about a person who just makes a string of very bad decisions and then has to turn his back on them and come home. That is a very powerful story, but it is not a story about salvation. However, his second most famous parable is probably the parable of the Good Samaritan, and that is a story about salvation. Yes, the primary purpose of the story was to rebuke prejudice and try to bring together separate communities. But at its heart, the way to do that is an act of selfless sacrifice by one man that saves another. So why then are we looking at Gandalf coming to save the besieged defenders of Helm's Deep? Well, that's because this is another moment of salvation in a story. In spite of their best efforts to defend Helm's Deep, Aragorn, Theoden, and the defenders of the keep were pretty much doomed at this point. There was no way they were going to defeat the orcs and drive them off on their own. It is the coming of Gandalf at the beginning of the third day, backed by Éomer and his horsemen, that finally saves the people of Rohan and delivers them into salvation. This is a vitally important part of storytelling to understand, and it is something that has been lost in the modern day. For the last 50, 60, maybe even 70 years, one of the most important concepts in storytelling has been agency. Characters must take actions, and we must see the consequences of those actions borne out through the story. One of the strong exceptions that people take to stories about salvation is that they involve a second party coming in and removing consequences from people, usually the protagonists, although the protagonists can also be the people who are saving others, removing other characters from their own consequences. Either way, this can really leave a bad taste in the mouth of the audience. Human beings are naturally concerned with justice, and very often, although not always, a display of salvation, the unilateral saving of someone, regardless of whether they deserve it or not, often takes people who are undeserving and gives them a second shot. And this really sits wrong with most people. Whenever Batman gives the Joker another shot at reforming, whenever Superman leaves Lex Luthor to run his business enterprise and try and destroy him once again, we wonder, why are these people giving these villains another shot? The answer is that they are looking for salvation, whether we like it or not. However, these moments have slowly been expunged from modern storytelling. These moments of grace, these moments to save other characters, whether or not they are deserving, the moments where prodigal sons can come home and be welcomed home, whether or not they have been jackasses to their parents. These moments are disappearing from our storytelling because we no longer believe that there is anything other than justice in the world. And yet, salvation is about tempering justice with mercy. It is my hope that we can find it in our hearts as a culture to once again tell stories where justice is not the end of the world, but rather it is a gateway into mercy where we can find salvation. It is my belief that this time of year is the perfect opportunity to reflect on that. And so I leave you with this thought. Salvation rests on 3 pillars. First, faith, a belief that there is a relationship that endures despite all of the punishment it has been put through. Second, humility, the willingness to go back to those you have wronged or those who have wronged you and try to repair the relationship. And third, sacrifice, and a willingness to put forth the effort to pick up the broken pieces of what you have lost and try to put them back together. Salvation does not always come, but this season, I pray you will find it nonetheless. Merry Christmas, and I'll talk to you later.